as if things aren't looking bad enough for Marvel with the actors and the writers already on strike, now we're looking at their VFX artists looking to unionize as well. And I think this is something that a lot of us have seen coming for a while. Now, jumping into this article from Variety, Marvel VFX artists vote to unionize. Visual effects crews at Marvel Studios have voted to unionize, announced on Monday. A press release notes that a supermajority of Marvel's more than 50 worker crew have signed authorization cards indicating they wish to be represented by the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees. Now, keep in mind, these are just the VFX crews at Marvel Studios who work under Marvel Studios. It's not from, like, when you see in the credits, like the thousands of names or whatever that they have. It's not all the people, because a lot of those are from outsourced VFX studios who also work on that. They contract them to work on their projects. These are basically just the in-house people that they have that are voting to unionize if they're working underneath them. And I think this can be beneficial to us as an audience member, kind of like how I think the same thing with the writers and actors going on strike. But this is also kind of a dangerous game for them, so to speak. But let me go further down into this. It's talking about how for a while that, like half a century since VFX have basically been a thing, that they're kind of unrepresented in the unions and things like that. VFX coordinator Bella Huffman, turnaround times don't apply to us, protected hours don't apply to us, and pay equity doesn't apply to us. Visual effects must become a sustainable and safe department for everyone who suffers far too long, and for all newcomers who need to know they won't be exploited. VFX artists' decisions comes amid a wider wave of union activity in the summer. So yeah, we've talked about how that's been going wrong with writers and actors. I mean, pretty much this is the time where everyone's saying like, okay, let's unionize or let's flex our muscle because we have power over these studios. And I think they might be thinking they have a little bit more power than what they do, especially with the ones at Marvel, because I'll get more on that in a little bit, but right now it's talking about this. Marvel's VFX artists have made headlines in recent months as the effects for recent film and TV projects, including Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumanium, Thor: Love and Thunder, She-Hulk: Attorney at Law, and Secret Invasion, have been met with criticism. Simultaneously, a wave of artists allege poor working conditions at Marvel projects and a series of stories published across the internet. Workers repeatedly complain about the studio's demanding post-production schedules, with concerns ranging from unrelated overtime to chronic understaffing to the inability to avoid delivering sustainable work due to constantly changing deadlines. Okay, so just kind of got through all that. But anyway, this is kind of what I'm saying about how they don't really have the muscle to flex in this sort of thing, because while the artists obviously are talented, and I think they have a lot more merit to strike, I mean, because they do have a skill set that isn't easily replicatable, unlike the writers who apparently fear that they can be replaced by a glorified search engine. The thing with the VFX artists is there's still a lot of them. I mean, we've all seen stuff on the internet and things like that. I mean, a lot of people can do what these in-house people do, and I'm not trying to denigrate what their job is. I'm just saying that as kind of a fact. I mean, there are other VFX artists out there, even though they're a lot more technical, they're more difficult to replace, but they're still ultimately really replaceable. And the reason I'm pointing this out with the Marvel in-house ones, because you got two types of people who work this sort of job. You got the people who can basically make it on their own. They work, and they tend to work for other studios, the ones that Marvel contracts to. And basically the people who don't work for those other studios that are being contracted out work for the studio itself, and ultimately their job is kind of the run around and put out fires. Like Marvel contracts those big studios to do a lot of the stuff, and then when they have like last minute tweaks and other things like that, then you have to bring in the in-house people to kind of do those things. And I can see why they feel like, oh well, I'm not getting paid enough to do this because I'm constantly putting out fires. And it's like, well, yeah, but that's kind of your job, sort of thing. I mean, it sucks, I understand that, but I mean, that's kind of what it is. And the whole pay disparity thing, and I also get that too. I mean, when this type of work, there's two type of things. You can either work on staff and get regular pay, regular salary, or you can work as a contractor, which is what these other effects houses do. I mean, they're the contractors, so it's like they can make more money, but at the same time, they're not necessarily having that steady paycheck coming in. Whereas you can trade that off, like you can trade off the bigger paycheck for less work versus a smaller paycheck but more consistent work. And I think these are probably salaried employees who are basically paid just to do what they work at Marvel Studios, so they're paid to do whatever they are told to do there. And I guess that could be one of those things where they are overworking them. And maybe if they are salaried, they should probably switch to hourly, so then you get that overtime and other things like that with it. But I mean, yeah, there's ways around it, and I'm not trying to defend Marvel by any stretch of the imagination, because I do think that they do overwork people, and I think a lot of that is just the fact that they don't know how to plan ahead. I mean, you got this famous example from Avengers Endgame. I mean, you see them here in their suits and stuff like that, but if you actually look at the behind the scenes, they didn't actually wear any suits there. I mean, it was all VFX, because they didn't know what the suit design was going to look like when they filmed this. So they're like, well, let's just put tracking marks on everyone, and then we'll film it later, or then we'll film it and then we'll figure out later how the suits are going to look. And I think that's kind of a poor way of going about it, because that creates a dilemma for the CGI or VFX artists who are creating this, and it was completely unnecessary. I mean, it could have been avoided with planning. And this is why I ultimately think this is going to be better for the audience, because when you have studios that if they have to pay their VFX artists more, or if VFX artists aren't working for them as a result of the type of conditions that they have, well, then you're going to start seeing them be a little bit more sparing with the CGI and things like this. So instead of focusing attention on something like this that could have been easily avoidable, then you can focus attention on other effects that would probably look better. So I mean, it would maybe teach studios to plan ahead better, and then you be more sparingly with what they actually do spend their CGI on, which would ultimately reduce the budgets of these movies. So then when the budgets are lower, then you won't have to bank on it being super successful or something like that. And then you could more or less allow creative freedom to the people behind it, instead of having the business people at the studio trying to make decisions in order to appeal to a wider audience. And by doing that, you ultimately will make something that I think more people will like. I mean, maybe that's just wishful thinking on all this. Let me know what you think about this in the comment section. And if you like this video, make sure you click the like button, share the video, and subscribe to the channel if you want to stay up to date with the latest news. Thank you.